Welcome to the Bromley Adult Education College Digital Drop-In Podcast, getting you back to work with confidence.
Hello, I'm Jill Collier and welcome to episode 12 of the Bromley Adult Education Digital Drop-In Podcast. Today I am joined by one of my students, Tracey Hall. Hello Tracey.
Hello Jill.
And Tracey has very kindly agreed to do this podcast with me on preparing for an interview. Tracey hasn't actually had an interview for 14 years. She very successfully worked in the travel industry, and for various reasons things have gone more online with the travel industry, and Tracey's looking to change her career slightly, so is going to start needing to search for jobs and indeed hopefully be successful in going for interviews, and that can be quite a scary thought when you haven't actually attended an interview for a long time. So Tracey, what would you say if I said you've got an interview coming up tomorrow? What would you say would be the most scary thought to you of tomorrow now?
Preparing for it, I suppose, checking the information that you're going to need to know before you go for the interview. Making sure even something silly like what to wear, because obviously having not worked for a while, I'd have to even make sure I've got something to wear, prepare myself mentally. Just wondering what's going to happen. I like to know what's going on.
Yes.
I suppose that's the worst fear.
So it's kind of the fear of the unknown, isn't it?
Definitely.
Not knowing what's going to happen when you get in there. And that's a very, very common fear. If we just backtrack a little bit, the first thing I think you said was what to wear.
Yeah.
And that, again, is a very, very valid question. It would depend on the type of job you were going for and the type of position, the type of company. So many variables there. I think what I would say is office dress has become more casual, but I would dress sort of smart casual for an interview. I don't think you can be overdressed for an interview. I think to come in looking like you're smart and ready to do business is better than coming in underdressed.
Yeah.
So I think if I would err on the side of being slightly smarter rather than not so smart. I've dealt with many companies over the years, and I noticed the kind of the music industry. They were wearing jeans and t-shirts years ago. I would then go on to my next customer, which would maybe be a bank, and they would all be in three-piece suits. So there's always been an anomaly, but I think I would always err on the side of caution and make sure you look reasonably smart. With regards of what you're going to need to know on the day, I think as we've discussed previously, there isn't a script for an interview. And if you were going for an interview in a very small company, their interview process would have evolved very differently than going into an interview in a corporate organisation where maybe it's just their HR department that dictates how an interview proceeds, and sometimes you don't even see the people you'll be working for until you've maybe got through 2 interviews and HR think you're right for the company, and then you would see potentially the people you would work with. So there can be real differences there. What you're going to need on the day is a very good question, and again, I would recommend, with regards to the actual company, actually finding out as much as you can about them. Do you have any ideas how you might be able to find out up-to-date information on a company?
You can Google it on the internet.
Google it, very good idea.
Ask other people for their opinions and information they might know. Internet would probably be my first.
I think it would mine as well. Yeah, I think I would go, as you say, Google them. And sometimes there's, again, depending on the company, there could be reviews or something. But then look at their website, and also, depending on the size of their company, maybe look at their Twitter account or their Facebook, or, as I say, it does depend on the type of company. And if they're quite sales orientated, you might find something they've just literally put out the night before or the day before.
So you can say something more current, yeah.
Absolutely. So then when you're in the interview, you can say, oh, I see you just won the account with ABC company. Is that going to be exciting for you? And it shows you've put the effort in to see about them. So you can often get more current information from their socials. Some companies actually do, if you look on their website, they do actually, or you don't even have to look on their website, you can Google them and say, preparing for a job at, and I pluck Sainsbury's out, not because they're any better or any worse, but I know for sure they have a section on their website what to do if you're coming in for an interview with us, and it just goes through what you can expect on the day, which I think is amazing, because there is this fear, isn't there, of going in and not knowing what to expect. So
that's good.
So yes, sometimes if it's a sizable company, there will be a whole section on their website as to how they think the day or the session will pan out. I think we worry about what they're going to ask us, but you equally need to put some effort into what are you going to ask them. So if you've looked at the job spec and you feel it's within your capabilities, there still might be questions from that. So when they say, is there anything you want to know about us? That's when you can ask, you might say, well, I looked at the job spec and it said you do this in the day. Could you give me a bit more information as to, which software you use, or, how much of my day that would be, just to, again, showing you've sort of interacted. And there's nothing worse than sitting there and saying nothing.
Yes, definitely.
That's just slightly worse than sitting there and saying too much. There is no answer.
No.
People either tend to babble and say too much, or sit there like a rabbit in the headlights and say nothing. And like anything, it's experience. The more you do, the more comfortable you become with an interview. And I think, as I alluded to before, every company will do things very differently. So you can't think, well, because I went for an interview at that company, that's how it's going to be.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, because years and years ago, even in the travel industry, just one company that I went for an interview with, I wasn't prepared, in the sense of I turned up and I had to do tests, and I'd never been asked to do tests before on other companies, which was quite unusual. And then every other interview after that, I was worried that they were going to do the same thing, and then I had to do a role play, which really was putting me on the spot. So I think definitely everyone's going to be completely different. So,
and that is great that you have that experience under your belt, and just because it's a few years ago, you can pull it out the bag. Yes, my fear is role play. It's something that can put you on the spot. And if that's something that you don't like, make sure you've done lots of practice with a family member. If it's tests, you don't quite know what's going to come up. But if it says a good working knowledge of Word and Excel, for example, then that's probably, if they're going to give you a test, make sure you have got a good working knowledge. And I think what you have to remember is they're not looking to trick you.
No.
They're not looking to make it uncomfortable for you. They're just looking to see whether you can do what they are going to require.
Yeah.
So, for example, role play, that's probably, was it because it was going to be
It was dealing with a difficult customer, which I totally understand. I just wasn't prepared for it. I'd never been asked in another interview to do it. So,
but that's perfectly logical, isn't it? If you're going to be dealing with customers, you're going to get difficult ones.
Definitely.
So why wouldn't they put you
Yeah.
in that position?
It just threw me because it had never happened before. So now, I suppose, in a way, if I do go for one, it's something that I'd have in the back of my mind that perhaps that would do if the role involved customer service, for example.
Absolutely, yes. And that could be a distinct possibility, wouldn't it? Or even, like hospital jobs where you're going in as a, there's a caring community. Again, you're going to get difficult patients, aren't you? So it is something that just, I guess, we're trying to see if you could think on your feet.
Yeah.
Whereas the tests that, again, were a little bit unnerving, that was probably to see if you would be able to use their software. And again, in different sectors, there is bespoke software that you would have to use that they probably wouldn't expect you to know, but they want to see if you are capable of using a computer.
Yeah.
I mean, in the travel industry, you probably had quite a bespoke system.
Yes, there was bespoke systems, yeah.
And again, there is in education, in schools, in the health sector.
Yeah, they've all got their own systems, which you don't have any access to them until you start working there. So it's very hard to be able to get further in an interview when you haven't had the experience of using that system, but hopefully the fact you've used other systems will show them that you can use various different systems.
You're absolutely right. The amount of my students that want to work school hours, term time, that's quite limiting to working in a school, really. And schools do use very specific
in-house
software.
systems, yeah.
And so many jobs will say experience needed in,
Yeah.
but there is no dummy system that you can go online and practice.
No, and you can't book yourself a course on something like that either. It has to be in-house experience for something like that.
Absolutely. So all they're really looking to do is to think, well, they don't know our actual system, but if they can use these other products, then they're probably going to be able to, transfer that knowledge. So preparing for an interview, you're saying you don't know the questions that are going to come up, and there is no magic wand. You are never going to know the questions that are going to come up. But what we can do is make sure we've got prepared statements in our minds that if they ask, we don't just look at them blankly or try and blabber out some incoherent, information. So one of the questions that quite often comes up is, tell me about yourself. And you can't just answer, there's not much to say really, you've got to come up with something.
Yeah.
And when they are saying, tell me about yourself, they're not interested that you've got a dog named Patch. They want to know, what can you tell them that would be of interest to them for the job that you are applying for. So if you were applying for an administrative job using Excel, for example, then you can say, well, I've worked in this industry for many years. We used this product, that product. I'm very familiar with using spreadsheets, databases, and give maybe an example of what you did with them. That's the sort of question that you can kind of bank the answer. And the easiest way to do it is to imagine someone's going to ask you that question, literally type or write the answer out and record it and play it when you're walking around. Just play it back to yourself.
So it's there.
So it's there and it's a
Banked
script.
to memory, yeah.
Banked to memory, absolutely. Because although afterwards you'll think, oh, I missed that middle sentence out, they don't know you've
still
missed
got
that.
some of it out, yeah.
You've got some of it out. And you might have to tweak it slightly. They might not say, tell me about yourself. They might say, can you tell me any relevant experience you've got?
Or give you a scenario and ask you, what would you do in this situation? What have you done in this situation?
What have you done in this situation? So you're absolutely right. If you've got that comfort factor of knowing you've prepared a couple of statements in your head, you know, you can listen to them on the train, the bus, the tube, as you're going there. You know, I always record things on my phone.
It's a good idea,
then, you know, write them out first so that you know it's factually correct and it's well worded, it sounds something that would make sense. Then say it out loud, and even the act of saying it out loud, because sometimes we say it in our head, but then when we say it out loud, we realise it doesn't sound quite right. So play it to somebody, play it to a family member, a friend, and say, does this sound okay? And they need to give constructive criticism, not, yeah, that's fine, or, oh, that sounds funny. They need to, if they can, give some constructive criticism. And it will just be a way of having something familiar within you that you know about. The other question that you get asked quite a lot in an interview is, what are your weaknesses, or what is your main weakness? And I think of an interview as a sales process, like a CV is a sales process. So you need to be careful how you answer a question like that. You don't want to say anything that's going to put them off you, like, well, if any of my children are ill, I have no support, so it's always going to be me that stops at home. They'd think, oh, you know,
no.
I know you're not in that position, your children are grown up, but you know, you don't want to say something, or oh, I love going out at night, so it
and
can
then
be
they think you're not going to be reliable.
That's it. It's going to be a bit tricky to make it in for 9, but I'll always be in for 10.
It's got to be something negative that turns positive.
You are absolutely right, Tracey, absolutely right. One of the, in the courses we run, one of the options I ask people to think about is along the lines of, I know I too readily say yes. When people ask me to do work, I say yes, although in my head I know I've got too much work already, but I say yes because I don't want to disappoint anybody. And then the timescale might be too long. So I know I need to work on being open and honest and saying, I will willingly do this for you, but it might be a 1-2 week delay because I've got so much on. Happy to take it on. Or do you know somebody else, if you need it immediately, can you think of somebody else in the team that might be able? So say you're working on almost being a people pleaser and saying yes to everyone, but you recognise that you're saying yes too often. And, you know, so something like that, it's a weakness, but it's a weakness you've recognised and you're trying to turn around.
Yeah, definitely.
So finding something like that, sometimes, and this is more in the analytical field, it's not, you know, it's not always, but sometimes they'll ask you a question that's not related to the job at all. It might be, how many pennies would you need if you wanted to stack them up the side of Big Ben? I don't know how many pennies I'd need to stack up the side of Big Ben. All they want to see is your kind of process for working that out. So I would say, I'm afraid I don't know off the top of my head, how tall is Big Ben? Do you know how tall Big Ben is? And if they say, no, I don't, fine, say, well, we'll need to check it. If they do, then you say, oh, okay, so if Big Ben is so many centimetres, metres tall, all I would need to do is find out, you know, the depth of a penny and multiply it to find that answer. They don't want you to give the exact answer. They just want to see if
how you work.
Exactly. How, if they give you...
Would it flummox you, or would you find a way around it?
Yes, to see exactly how you would think it out. And as I say, there's nothing wrong in saying to them, don't know how tall Big Ben is. Do you know how tall it is? If they're used to asking that question, they may very well. If they say no, they don't either.
I suppose they would say that, given that they would know that people would prepare for them asking certain questions, and that would be
throw somebody.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So sometimes that happens, but as I say, that's more when they need to see your analytical skills. But as we say, there is no particular process for an interview. It goes without saying, prepare yourself physically if you are going in for an interview the next day. I know it's a tall order, but try and get to bed early and get to sleep. I mean, little Miss Anxious here, my stomach would be going round the night before. So I know it's a tall order just to say, well, go and have an early night and have a nice restful sleep. But, you know, don't sort of have a bottle of wine to try and knock you out, and then you're going to wake up in the middle of the night. You know, it's just trying to prepare. And again, how you are going to get to this interview. If you are having an interview in Beckenham or Petts Wood, it might be very different as to having an interview in North London.
No, but it's parking, public transport, whether anything's going on that day, the effects of the weather on the public transport and the roads. You just don't know, do you? So
You've got all that
if you plan, at least you've planned to a certain degree, and then if anything happens on the day, you're a bit more prepared for it, I suppose.
You're absolutely right. What is that saying? Fail to plan. No, plan. Oh, I can't remember. It will come to me. So yes, if you're going to be taking public transport, I would consider looking at all the apps available, such as, I mean, I use City Mapper a lot, and you can it just picks up where you are now, and you say where you want to go. Leaving now, and it's generally no, I'm going to be leaving, you know, if I need to be at an interview at 9 o'clock, I think I would say I need to be there at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And no, I'm going to be leaving tomorrow and I need to arrive. You can sort of override it and say I need to arrive at 8 o'clock. And it will tell you what time trains to get and things like that. There's Google Maps that again do something pretty similar. You can say whether you're driving, walking, taking public transport.
You can even do the street view, can't you? So you can familiarise yourself perhaps with the building, what it looks like, where the entrance is, something as silly as that.
Brilliant idea.
So you don't think, oh, I don't even know where I'm going or what I'm looking for. So
that's a brilliant idea. I went for something miles away, well, not miles away, but in Colchester, and it happened to be, this is about 10 or 11 years ago when we had that awful winter of snow, and I'd done just that. I'd Googled to see what the actual place looked like. So there I was in all this snow, and then I recognised it from the picture I'd seen. So that kind of gave me hope.
Yeah.
So yes, you're absolutely right. Having a good idea. I mean, frankly, if it was in Beckenham or Petts Wood, I probably would drive there the day before at the same sort of time, so that I got a feel for
the traffic and things. Yeah,
I would. But if it was in London and you were taking transport, as I say, I just allow for the fact that the train you thought you were going to get could be cancelled or diverted. So if you kind of aim to get there much earlier, the worst that can happen is you have to go and sit and have a coffee somewhere.
Yeah, but that's better.
Definitely better. And then again, if you've got earphones, you can listen to your pre-recordings of what you might say. Fail to prepare, then you will prepare to fail. That is what it is. Yes, fail to prepare, and then you're preparing to fail.
That was in your bank of memories.
Somewhere it came back to me. Yes. So to me, the overriding thing is to prepare for an interview, because if you really do go into it completely blindly, you are not going to come over as your best self. So looking at all these options will really help you, and facing rejection is a natural. None of us like to say you haven't been selected,
No.
but the reality is it's going to happen. We can't all go through life with a faultless record, especially if we've gone for jobs that are a little bit outside of our area of expertise because we want to just see what happens.
Or a change in career like what I'm going to be doing. So yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. So you're not going to get every interview you go for, but you've got to recognise that actually you're winning to have even got that interview.
The experience of the interview as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. The experience of the interview is priceless. You cannot buy that skill any other way. You can go on courses and courses that will prepare you, but until you're actually in that room, seeing how they run their interview process, it's just down to experience. And if you don't do something for a long time, you're out of that kind of bubble of keep putting yourself out there.
Comfort zone, yeah.
You're so out of your comfort zone. So I always say, if you're lucky enough to get an interview, you've won it. You've won the fact that you are going to be privy to this time with somebody and just getting back used to having an interview. If you then don't get it, fine, you didn't get it, but you got that experience.
Yeah.
And it's not always, but often, if you contact them and say, obviously you were disappointed you didn't get the
Feedback,
job,
yeah.
may you have some feedback. If it's certainly a company that's gone through HR, they will be able to feedback very easily. Some of the smaller companies might not, but hopefully they will be honest enough to tell you, and in most cases they will, whether they just what they felt you didn't have enough experience.
Yeah, I have had that before. I've had that with one company where they did give me feedback, and I found it really useful. So yeah, I didn't take it offensively. The reason they gave was a valid reason, so it was helpful because it wasn't that I wasn't suitable. It's something that we'd had an armed robbery where I worked, and at this particular job I would be working in a shop by myself for periods of time, and they were worried that in that situation it would be difficult for me.
Yes.
So they would have given me the job. They just felt that in that situation it was going to be difficult for me to be left alone in a shop. So so it was reassuring because I did well at the interview, and they said that.
Yes.
It was just an aspect of what had happened previously. They felt that particular job wasn't going to be suitable for me.
Yes. And what you've got to remember saying that is sometimes, and I've had this with many of my students and friends, is you may apply for a job you don't get, but then they come back to you. A friend of mine applied for a teaching assistant job, which she didn't get, but then a few months later they came back and said, we didn't give you the one in that year because we didn't feel you had the right experience, but we loved you.
Yeah.
Now a position has come up in this other section of the school. No interview needed. Will you take the job? She was like, yes.
Yeah.
And, so if people like you, they will kind of keep you on the back burner and something else might come up. The other thing with being rejected for an interview is sometimes, and it's unfair, but sometimes a job has to be advertised for fairness, but unless somebody walks through the door that is so amazingly super,
all bells and whistles, yeah.
They've got somebody in mind in-house.
Yeah.
And again, that's sometimes what you've got to bear in mind.
That happens quite a lot, I think, doesn't it, in larger companies? So they have to advertise it externally, don't they?
They do. But to be seen to be fair, and as I say, it's not that everybody is a waste of time, because there might just be that person that walks in that will fit the bill. But a lot of the time, there's already been internal applications and they're just looking around to see if anything else would work out better. If not, I shouldn't say the devil but the person they know with all their quirks, they know what they're getting with that person. So, there is lots of reasons why you might be rejected, and
don't take it personally.
Absolutely.
And carry on.
And then move on to the next.
Yeah.
And again, applying for jobs, you don't have to exclusively apply for one and wait for the feedback from that. You can be applying for lots of jobs. And a friend of mine did that just before Christmas. They had applied for several jobs and they got the answer from one job that they'd been successful, so they quite legitimately went to the other job that they were also very keen on and said, I've been offered a job. When is your decision making process going to be at a point where we know what's going on? Otherwise I will accept this job. And that again can focus companies, because they might think, oh, the one I really wanted,
she's very popular.
it's gone, absolutely, or it's going to go if we don't step on it. Because again, if you've got a very structured company, they may have dates and times that they will adhere to. If it's a little company that's really busy, and I've worked in these, I've said, you know, we'll get back to you next week, and by next week I'm thinking, oh, haven't even looked at all of those all of that again. I must get onto it. And sometimes somebody emailing me and saying, oh, I haven't had any feedback yet.
Prompting you,
I will say, I am so sorry, you're absolutely right. I told you this week I'm going to need another couple of days. And I think, wow, she's good. She's actually come back to me.
Taking the initiative.
So sometimes even the best laid plans, if you're busy doing your job, you don't actually have time to do what you wanted to do to get that other position filled. So, you know, it can go in all different ways. So there's nothing to stop you applying for as many jobs as you can. It's a numbers game. Apply for as many as you feel you possibly can. Looking for a job is a full-time job. And then any interviews you get, great. Just think, great, this is an interview. I don't care. It's an opportunity to experience what goes on in that company. And if you don't get the one, great, move on to the next one. So it's a big wide world out there, Tracey. And it is scary getting back into the...
It is, it's definitely very scary. Even just the application process, which is what I'm just starting at the moment, just getting myself in the right frame of mind first. I'm lucky that I'm not urgently looking for a job, so just I'll just carry on.
That is the, you know, the right approach to have, and just kind of keep going with it. So do you think now you can go away and maybe prepare for some of these questions so that you do feel a little bit more confident going in?
Yes, definitely, you've reminded me of various different things to look at, so and bear in mind, so I definitely would do that.
That's good. Well, I do sincerely thank you for your own time, Tracey. It's been very kind of you to spend this time with me.
Fine.
And I wish you every success.
Thank you. I hope it helps someone else.
I'm sure it will. People listening to this, they're just going to be on buses, you know, going for interviews themselves, or thinking about stepping into that big wide world. It will. So I really do sincerely thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Tracey.
Bye-bye.
For help with all your job searching needs, do visit one of our digital drop-in venues. On a Monday, we are open 12:30 to 3:30 p.m. at our Poveris Centre, and on a Tuesday, we are open 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at our Kentwood Centre. In our sessions, we offer free use of computers for job searching, advice on creating a winning CV, plus lots of short training courses to gain skills in the digital world.
This podcast has been produced by Bromley Adult Education College. For full details of how we can support your return to work, visit our website www.baec.ac.uk and search for Digital Drop-In. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast to receive notifications of new episodes.